back memories, brings back memories of 9/11. I'm sure everybody has their own story, where you were, what it felt like, what you were doing. It seems that was a time of cultural trauma for all of us. And the question we have is, how do we move past that? How do we become resilient? Matter of fact, when conferences like this, people come in, they're looking for answers. Well, in this little breakout, we're not going to give answers, but we're going to look at some really good questions that we have to wrestle with. And that first question is one of resiliency. And certainly being at the memorial and then being here this week, it is a question on all our minds. And I think the way we look at resilience is we go through a process. And that process, the first part of the process is that we honor the heroes and the victims. And no matter what city of a terrorist attack or even a natural disaster, we do that. We come together and light some candles, hold some pictures, and tell stories. And I think that's important that we go through that process. But after that, what we do is we look back at the past. We look back at the event, and we try to figure out, well, what happened? How can we prevent it? What can we do better? And that leads us to looking at the future. What's the next big attack going to be? And how do we prepare for it? And the reason for looking back and then forward is that we could enhance the present. So what we're going to do this afternoon for a little bit is we're going to look towards the future and what that holds for us and how we can prepare for that next large-scale event. So, sounds good? All right. Here's a question for you. If you knew what the next attack would be, what would you do? Would that change things? And I think it would. So we're going to look at some of these things. 3 of them are attacks, the other are just big fires. But in 9/11, they used planes as weapons. In Mumbai, they used active shooters, IEDs, and fire as weapons. In Las Vegas, it was an active shooter from a high purchase. And I know some of you were at the breakout for Las Vegas. In Dubai and London, it was a huge fire based on the construction of the building. So the question for us this afternoon is, what happens if terrorists takes those events that are in the media, and plans an attack? What we're talking about is the next big scale event. We've seen small events, and certainly in New York we've had a number of small events, attempted bombings, ramming situations. But terrorists have not had the major event, the mega event, the next 9/11. They haven't, thankfully, because of all of us in the room and many others. But we're going to talk about that next event. And based on our own intelligence, looking at information, the one that we're afraid of is one of vertical terrorism, an attack on a high-rise building. And we've seen that before. In those pictures that I just had up there, and certainly in New York, the 93 bombing and then 9/11, we saw vertical terrorism, an attack on high-rise. But flying planes into a building takes a lot of skill. Using semi-automatic weapons and the use of arson doesn't take a lot. So the fear is, as the skill sets decrease, more people can do an attack, therefore the probability of an attack increases. So imagine a 9/11 without the planes. And that's what we have to talk about. So I'm going to show you a short 3-minute film, and then hopefully we can have a discussion. What's the future going to look like? What do we have to prepare for? What does the intelligence community have to look for? What do we as first responders need to do? And what does the private sector need to do? We're going to build a partnership if we're going to prevent the next attack or if we're going to respond to it. So I'll show you a short little film, and then we'll talk a little bit and make sure everybody gets out to get to Carnegie Hall in time.
The threat has changed. Today's terror tactics can no longer fit into simple single-method categories, such as firearms or improvised explosives. Firearms, usually long guns, are commonly used with suicide vests, other explosives, and now, even fire. Attacks on Western targets in recent years by primarily Islamic extremists are becoming a combination of deadly techniques. With the exception of September 11th, the operational space for many attacks have taken place in the low-rise arena, essentially a two-dimensional environment. In the upcoming months and years, FDNY intelligence analysts anticipate a new three-dimensional battle space, what is known as vertical terrorism. New York City, like many urban centers, is continuing to push the limits of vertical development. Mega high-rise buildings, hundreds or even thousands of feet tall, are being constructed among the already towering skyscrapers of New York City. These buildings represent an exceptional challenge for first responders due to both their vertical height and expansive floor areas. These features present many operational obstacles, such as timely access to the area of operations, developing a common operating picture, establishing an effective water supply, command and tactical radio communications, search and rescue of occupants trapped on multiple floors, mitigating the effects of toxic gases and smoke that permeate the building, and triage, treatment, and removal of victims in a high-rise environment. In light of this challenging operational environment, specific firefighting and rescue procedures have been developed supporting fire suppression, search, water supply, medical care, communications, and command. Weaponized fire and smoke in conjunction with active shooting and improvised explosives seeks to challenge and overcome these strategies and tactics with the express purpose of increasing casualties. The fire service may find itself challenged by this high-consequence environment, preventing basic fire suppression and rescue operations. Facing a dynamic shooter or explosive threat quickly raises the stakes on firefighter and emergency medical technician safety and risk management. Law enforcement will be met with building height and fire conditions that may impact the effectiveness and speed of threat suppression. This terror technique requires expertise and coordinated interagency response to stop the killing and stop the dying. The dual mission of neutralizing an attacker and rapid care of trauma patients is paramount during such events. Response to a complex attack will impact first responder capabilities and life-saving services. This three-dimensional environment presents the greatest challenge: vertical terrorism.
Okay, at this point, our friends in the back with the cameras, I want to ask you to shut them down for a little bit. I promise you, I'll have it turned back on for my last slide, and you'll get stuff that you need. But because of the sensitivity of this topic, we'll just keep it off for about a half hour and then allow you to turn it back on to get what you need.